You can support this podcast at patreon.com/partnersincrimemedia.
This week's Law & Order Marathon winner is Susanna Sly of Morristown, Tennessee. Susanna will get a marathon decal showing that she watched 26.2 hours of her favorite crime show. To be next week's winner, sign up at lawandorderpodcast.com.
I'm Kevin Flynn with Rebecca Lavoie and James Wyrick, and these are their stories.
You think you know who did it, but you don't know who did it. Law and order, law and order, law and order. It's no ordinary police procedural, baby. It's the FNOG of police procedurals, baby. Law and order, law and order, law and order, law and order. These are their stories, these are their stories.
Welcome to These Are Their Stories, the podcast about network TV's most enduring crime franchise and the real-life cases that inspired their shows. I'm Kevin Flynn. Each podcast will break down an episode from either Criminal Intent, SVU, or Original Recipe. And today we're looking at a classic Law & Order Season 8, Episode 5, Nullification.
The new Sons of Liberty homepage. It's a militia.
Maybe Jesse James and his pals were trying to finance a revolution.
Joining me to do just that is true crime author, the host of the podcast Crime Writers On and Slate's Mom and Dad Are Fighting, Rebecca Lavoie. Hello, Rebecca.
Good evening, Kevin. How are you?
I am fine because our very special guest today is the host of the Military Justice Podcast, retired Lieutenant Colonel James Wyrick. Wyrick, are you reporting for duty?
Yes, Kevin, I am. Hello, Rebecca.
He's just going to give his, serial number and name and rank. Just like those weirdos in this episode.
So, no, it's great to be here. Thank you. I really love both of you and everything you do.
Oh, we feel the same. It's completely mutual.
Yeah, it's going to get all mushy.
So I've told you both that I really care for the both of you and I like you, but how did you choose me for this white guy conspiracy?
There's certainly an awful lot of post 9/11 Law and Orders and SVUs where they bring in the military and they always have some sort of weird tangential relationship to the war on terror or somebody in the military. And this one isn't that, but I still thought that, there was something about this episode that reminded me of Wyrick, and it was the flag.
Well, there's the flag, and there's also the fact that Wyrick is, in fact, a talented and accomplished trial attorney in the military justice system and knows everything there is to know about courtroom procedure. And there's this whole confounding nullification part of this episode that I didn't frickin' understand, so I'm just glad we have a guest on who could maybe explain that to us.
I think this is pretty clear. This is all about interdimensional, shape-shifting child molesters sent here by Hillary Clinton.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe Meadowlark Lemon and the New World Order to create child pornography in a pizza parlor.
That's right. That's right.
I thought, so we're not turning this into InfoWars, right?
No, we are not.
Oh,
we're 100% not doing that.
Now, Wyrick, you're our only guest who's been both to boot camp and to law school. So which taught you how to be more ruthless?
Oh God, it's a mix. It's just they doubled up on each other. And in fact, this when this first came out, this episode we're talking about, I was in law school, and this is when Law and Order kind of starts jumping the shark for me because I start to learn about the law. So then it becomes a little. I still love the show, but in a different way now.
Yeah, our last guest, who was also an attorney, once you see how the sausage is made, it's very hard to go back.
She's like, I thought it was all going to be wearing silk blouses and nice suits. And then I learned it's just being bored and waiting for shit to happen.
Yeah.
Oh, and so much dead time. You don't have the slick repartee. It's not crafted by Alan Sorkin. It is long breaks, people going and conferring with other people in whispered tones.
There's a lot of reading.
Yes. A lot of reading. Yes. And a lot of writing of boring things that get edited later. And
Now, Wyrick, of all the franchises, which two cops are your favorite detective team?
Favorite Law and Order detective team.
Briscoe and Logan.
Good pick.
Classic.
I like them. I mean, it was the first, 5 or 6 seasons. It still had this newness to it. And then it becomes kind of campy later, but then you start enjoying the camp.
That's a good crossover coupling because Logan is the original. He's the OG one of the OG detectives.
Yes, as I misspoke last week,
And-
he is in fact the OG.
And then you have this crossover period, this overlap for about a season and a half where it's the two of them.
Right.
Briscoe certainly ends up being sort of the character, the centerpiece of
Many
classic
seasons.
Law and Order.
Yeah, sure.
And Wyrick, who is your favorite prosecutorial team?
Favorite Law and Order District Attorney Prosecutorial Team.
But I do like Jack McCoy with anybody. So in any matchup that he has, I have a big love-hate relationship with Jack McCoy. I mean, he does a great job at this character, but this character is so ridiculous. At some point, you just want to go, like, even the way he talks to his other counsel at counsel's table, I would wring his neck. Like, what? You know, he's just lecturing. He's like, well, I guess you don't like America, or you're like, wait a second, I'm your colleague here. So I would want to stab him occasionally, but he is a great character.
I also happen to know that Wyrick has a big crush on Connie Rubirosa, which maybe he's too classy to bring up on this podcast. But he is an original Rubirosa fan. I remember him telling me that a long time ago.
That is true.
And I mean, we can't blame you for that. She's
Elena De La Garza, yeah, excellent
gorgeous.
choice. Excellent choice, Wyrick. The Marines have good eyes. All right, now let's look at the first half of this episode, Law & Order Season 8, Episode 5, Nullification. Well, thank you, Off-Track Betting, for allowing armored car guards to just walk out the front door every day with the cash. Because what could possibly go wrong? I know, 3 guys in ski masks get into a machine gun fight trying to rip them off. 1 guard dead, 1 bad guy dead, 1 in the hospital.
All this body armor, and they forgot the bulletproof ski mask.
Tell me this hump has a wallet.
Ardentis Fortuna Ayuvat?
Ardentis Fortuna Juvat.
Yeah, Jesse James and his dead partner both have the same tattoo. An eagle with what?
Fortune favors the brave.
What'd you get from that guy?
A long shot. Albie's gal. Paid $38 to win. Thinks the guards should have bet.
Guess it wasn't their lucky day.
Their weapons had been altered, and they used a custom gunpowder in the bullet to give them a boost. Both robbers are from the same small town and have the same tattoo. At the parlor, they say 12 guys got the same eagle tattoo. Briscoe can barely work his pager, so it's up to Curtis to scour the internet for that tattoo. It's used by a group called the New Sons of Liberty. Ross gets a warrant for their membership list, and SWAT teams converge on the homes of 20 people. They find a huge cache of automatic weapons at the home of the dead robber's brother-in-law, Phil Christie. When questioned by the detectives, the guys literally give only their name, rank, and serial number. The lab connects the gunpowder from the robbery to the militia's ammunition, and the group is charged with conspiracy. Okay, so that tattoo says Attendis Fortuna Uviat. So Ray speaks Latin all of a sudden?
Ray speaks Latin like a boss. And it was one of those scenes where it was like, if any other cop in any other part of this franchise had seen that tattoo and recognized what it meant, it would have been because I was in the service and he was in the service and I know. So I kind of thought that's where it was going. Mm-hmm. But no, he's apparently just a Latin scholar. Good for you, Ray Curtis. Very impressive.
And a computer scientist, as we're going to find out immediately.
Who knows how to use a search engine?
Yeah, for 1997, it was pretty well advanced.
Well, can we go back for 1 second to the beginning? I loved Briscoe with, you just knew it was going to come with, because it was at the track betting parlor, and Briscoe with, look like somebody, lost their luck today, as he's standing over a dead body. Like, I mean,
that was too easy, right?
That was so, I mean, listen, gallows humor occurs, but like, that's a murdered individual, and you're like, looks like your luck ran out.
Looks like you shouldn't have bet on Albie's gal after all, right? Yeah, we shouldn't laugh because it's true. He's right. It's dark.
And that's actually the only time in the whole series that he ever made a wisecrack over a dead body. Now we get to see the great detective work of Profaci.
Oh, Profaci.
So at last, the Law & Order writers are acknowledging that Briscoe and Curtis can't run everything down themselves.
Right.
And I think this is where later we'll get the necessity of having the backup swing team. Finn and Munch.
Right. And the other thing that I want to give them credit for, the writers in this episode, is that, of course, we have the Dr. Richardson. I don't remember the name of this ME, the one they flirt with, who says she has a 27-year-old boyfriend or whatever.
Oh, yeah,
which is
and Briscoe
adorable.
loved that.
Yeah, totally. But then we also have the ballistics expert, who's also a woman. Women scientists abound in this era of Law and Order, which I really appreciate. And Profaci's just running stuff down and making phone calls, which is great, because that's exactly what he should be doing.
We're going to need to know your whereabouts on the afternoon of Tuesday, August 8th.
Profaci is not exactly...
Sherlock Holmes?
Sherlock Holmes, yeah.
No, he's not. But Ray Curtis is. So there is this hilarious scene where Ray basically introduces Briscoe and America to the concept of search engines. And he's like, all you have to do.
Type in what we're looking for, Eagle Graphics, and the motto, Audentis, Fortuna, Juvat. Search engine does the rest. If it's anywhere on the internet, we'll get a hit.
One of these days, you have to teach me how to play solitaire on that thing.
Bingo. This shows us where to find it.
Let's surf the net.
And then he does this hysterical thing where he leans back and puts his hands behind his head, like, with elbows out, like, we just have to wait for the computer to do its magic.
Yeah.
And it was incredible. It was an incredible scene. And then it zooms in on the screen. And the name of the search engine is Search Me.
Because they couldn't get the rights to Alta Vista
or Ask Jeeves.
Ray definitely has superior powers of a Google foo here, where he's able to track stuff down. The only problem is, though, I didn't hear the dial-up modem that he would have used.
No, but there is a wonderful, wonderful piece of dialogue where he's at the computer at one point and, he's doing all this computer stuff and it's like, 3 a.m. and he's still like in there. And
he's in a chat room trying to draw out militia people.
And the only reason we know it's 3 a.m. is because their hair is mussed up, but the lighting in the squad room is exactly the same. And everybody in the background is exactly the same. But anyway, Briscoe says it's 3 a.m. and they're talking about conspiracies and Briscoe makes a remark.
What are you doing?
I'm looking for the black helicopters.
And Ray, deadpan, says...
They don't come near urban centers.
And then he just has this little, smile. Like, he's just acknowledging the crazy that he's been reading. And it is the nicest, most natural scene, not only of this episode, but of many of the episodes of this era of Law & Order that we've watched. I loved that little moment.
Lieutenant Colonel Wyrick, do the black helicopters come to urban centers or not?
I can't tell you about the black helicopters, but they are controlled by Hillary Clinton and the New World Order.
So, Wyrick, what do you think of everybody's superior recitation skills?
Cray, Lewis, March 21st, New Sons of Liberty, 016.
Robbins, Thomas, October 15th, Sergeant, New Sons of Liberty, 004.
Brandt, Matthew Jr., December 18th, 1980. Private, New Sons of Liberty, 018.
Christie, Philip, August 4th, 1962. Major, New Sons of Liberty, 002.
Well, during my time as a defense attorney, I would be very happy if they did that. At least they weren't talking and breaking down, but it is funny that they're just repeating their names and then date of birth, and then when you have their serial number, which I could recite from memory, but it's just my social, so I won't.
Oh.
and you notice that their serial numbers are like, there's 20 people in this militia?
Briscoe really likes 004.
Sergeant, New Sons of Liberty, 004.
004? What are you, James Bond -3?
-3?
Yes,
very, not a very clever joke,
good.
but funny in the moment. Yes.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, James Bond -3.
Well, in the first half, when the cops are talking to the guy in the bait shop, or they make the arrest where they find all the weapons, all of a sudden it's off the top of their head. They're reciting the First Amendment and then the Second Amendment.
Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the right of the people to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances.
I have the right to remain silent. Anything I say can be used against me in a court of law.
Militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
It's a dead solid lock that anyone outside of a law school classroom or possibly an undergraduate classroom that recites any part of the Constitution from memory is a nut job, is cuckoo bananas. And they do it forever in this.
They got one for every occasion, too.
That might be the funniest thing anyone's ever said on this damn show. Because that is a tell, right?
Oh,
I mean, it's also it's a tell in a way that was sort of prescient in a way, because I really think this episode is a very interesting episode to watch right now for a variety of reasons that I think we should get into during the trial portion. But there is this whole militia thing in Hastings, by the way, which is hilarious because, by the way, that's where my sister lives.
By the tattoo parlor.
And it's a very, very unlikely place for there to be a militia. A lot of people commuting to Manhattan from Hastings. Not a lot of people living in the middle of nowhere, stockpiling munitions. But it was sort of an interesting look at kind of, this is post-Waco, because I mentioned Waco like 100 times on the episode. It's clearly post that. What TV writers think these people would be like. And yeah, they kind of nailed it with the whole recitation of the Constitution thing, because we're seeing that right now. It's kind of crazy.
No, they definitely did. One of my co-counsel on a case that I was friends with for a long time and was a former assistant U.S. attorney, they would get these guys, they call themselves sovereign citizens, and they don't believe that the Constitution applies to them for some crazy reason, and only the Uniform Commercial Code does. So they will copyright their name, and then when the judge or the prosecutor puts their name into a document, then they'll sue him for copyright violation. I mean, none of this is real, but they do have like this kind of scorecard or this pre-set up way of doing things, and they've decided that like the guy later in the episode says, isn't it true that only people are sovereign, courts are not sovereign? I don't even know what the hell that means.
We have a Hey, It's That Guy.
Yeah, we do.
Hey, it's that guy.
Wyrick, can you name the actor who played Phil Christie?
Oh, I cannot name him by name, but I loved him and later as a vampire for many years. I mean, he's done many, many things, but he was in True Blood for a long time.
Right,
Russell Edgington.
Right. The actor's name is Dennis O'Hare, and he was, as you say, Russell Edgington in True Blood, and he's part of the ensemble cast of American Horror Story. So every year he's playing a different character.
We are ordinary people, like you, with jobs and mortgages, who are willing to lay it all on the line because we are afraid of losing our freedom.
I think this is one of 6 appearances in the Law and Order universe.
Not surprising.
His first time, he played a schizophrenic who also represented himself.
You know what? I actually just saw that episode recently, and that's a really good episode,
and he does a great job in that. He has played a priest in all 3 Law and Order franchises. I don't know why that is. Maybe he just looks like a priest.
Father Edgington,
yeah. But he's a great actor, and he in this, I mean, if you saw him as the evil vampire, it's hard to think of him as sort of this mild-mannered, earnest but somewhat twisted guy. But he really pulls it off like in a very easy way.
I will say Russell Edgington on True Blood was one of the greatest scenery-chewing performances on cable TV. And funnily enough, later in the series, Christopher Maloney came on as the next like Russell Edgington 2.0 kind of character. And it was so bad. Like, it was so not like the Russell Edgington, this guy. Like, this guy's just a natural. He's got a great screen presence. He sort of is back on his heels when he's overacting in a way that makes it, like, totally believable in a way that someone like Chris Maloney just, like, can't do. So I'm not surprised they kept bringing him back.
Yeah, because he also, and we'll talk a little more about the second half, but he is the bad guy, but in a way he has to be somewhat sympathetic. He can't be we have to have some feeling for his position. So Wyrick, he has to play it. He can't come off, as Dr. Evil. He has to also have some bit of relatability, and I think in his performance he does it.
He comes off as you reluctantly agree with some of his points, and you go, oh, yeah, he seems like a good guy that's just trying to do the right thing, but, it's a little bit crazy. As we mentioned, he tends to recite the Constitution. Odd. but he's sympathetic. You definitely have that. I'm not sure quite as sympathetic as they make it out on the show. Like, I can't believe anybody, that, well, maybe the New World Order is coming.
Rebecca, you know what the bad part of going to jail is?
Being in jail?
No, they can't deliver Blue Apron to you when you're behind bars.
That's true. It's not like Goodfellas. We get to chop garlic in your cell.
That's true. You can't have a knife. But Blue Apron is the #1 fresh ingredient and recipe delivery service in the country.
Not surprised. We're like half of their customer base, right? You and me?
I think so. We definitely...
We eat a lot of Blue Apron.
We do eat a lot of Blue Apron. Hey, for less than $10 a meal, they deliver seasonal recipes along with pre-portioned ingredients right to your door. Some of the meals this month include basil pesto chicken with summer vegetable panzanella.
Nice pronunciation, Kevin.
Did I get that right?
No.
How about remember the meatball pizza with
that
fresh
really
mozzarella
cheese
was great. And charmed tomatoes?
We ate that.
Oh, I also like this one, the whole grain pasta and summer vegetables with heirloom tomato caprese salad.
You love a good caprese salad.
All fantastic seasonal stuff sent right to our door and so fun to cook. We love it. Check out this week's menu and get your first 3 meals free with free shipping by going to blueapron.com/order.
You will love how good it feels and tastes to create incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so do not wait.
That's blueapron.com/order.
Blue Apron, a better way to cook.
Now let's look at the second half of this episode. Phil Christie, whose previous legal experience was being a bailiff, elects to represent the group. He begins by declaring themselves prisoners of war held by an enemy government, but the judge isn't buying it.
At all.
The Geneva Convention defines prisoners of war as persons who have fallen into the power of the enemy.
The enemy being the district attorney.
And any office or branch of any government which is not constituted of and by the people.
Your Honor, how long are we going to humor this man? On its face, this is a patently absurd motion.
At trial, each of the defendants prove why they have bumper stickers that say, "My son is an honor student at an anti-government militia." They constantly interrupt the proceedings with recitations of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence. They get ejected one by one, and soon only Christie is there to defend the cause. Meantime, in the jury room, one juror is caught passing another anti-government literature and information on jury nullification. This is the concept that they have the power to exonerate a defendant from a law they find unjust. Those guys are kicked off, meaning losing one more will result in a mistrial. Christie continues to make the case the government is oppressive and pulls out a paper on jury nullification written by, oh snap, Jack McCoy.
Damn.
Ross finds proof that a juror lied about once being in a student protest group, which would give them their face-saving mistrial. But the records are from illegal police surveillance from the 60s, so McCoy refuses to use it out of principle. At closing, he turns it up to McCoy level 10, imploring the jury to follow the law. It's a hung jury, and McCoy promises to re-prosecute, but he walks away discouraged that even one person would vote to acquit. Now, it's really the second half that makes this a classic episode. And
second half sings.
Second half sings, and you realize that you have seen this episode 50 times when it gets to the discussion about the flag.
Your Honor, we move that all charges be dismissed on the grounds that we are prisoners of war.
Mr. Christie, this is a civilian criminal court. I have no authority to rule on your motion.
You do, Your Honor. That flag has fringes on it, which means it is a military flag, which means this court is a military tribunal. Our
Mr.
motion...
Christie, I don't care how many fringes, bells, and whistles are on this flag. This is a civilian criminal court. Got it?
Wyrick, I got to know, is there anything to the flag having fringes on it?
Well, no, absolutely, absolutely not. The fact that you can get into that only flags with fringes are supposed to be flown, or the ensign, other word for the flag, is supposed to be flown on a ship. Therefore, they say admiralty law applies, and it's in an international tribunal. All of that is utter bullshit. But equally utter bullshit is the actor they chose to play that judge.
Her?
She just comes off as she's like, this is a criminal court. You understand?
It's civil. She does not want, it was like the King of Queens. It was like Leah Remini from the King of Queens was on the bench. What are you talking about?
This is a civilian criminal court. Understand, Buster?
I don't care if there are any bells and whistles on that flag.
But I love how she just isn't having it. I love how she's just like,
oh, yeah, no.
No.
That part is good. It's just like turn her. They just want to turn her into a stereotype times 11. You know, like is she just having coffee talk?
I want to know, Wyrick, when you were a military prosecutor, did anybody ever say, hey, that flag doesn't have fringes on it?
No, I have no idea what that even means.
Well,
clearly, I'm in a civilian court.
That's
and
right,
that flag
yes.
doesn't have. That's sort of like people who say that stop signs with a white border are optional, which is like a punking thing the high school kids do to each other. That's all I can think about when I hear the stupid flag fringes thing. It's kind of like those cases where they're like, you spelled my name wrong in the indictment, therefore you can't prosecute me. It's like one of those, you know?
Right, yeah. Oh, you got the wrong flag up. Sorry, I'm innocent.
If only were that simple. Now, we get to the trial, and I say this has got to be a record for how many times a judge got to bang his gavel to restore order in a single episode.
Suddenly, whenever any form of government becomes
Order in the court. I
these
want you.
ends, it is the right of the people to alter it, to abolish it, and to
Get 'em out
institute
of
new
my
government,
court.
laying its
You hear me?
foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form.
Yeah, it was actually pretty exciting. And the second judge I really liked, because the second judge we got to see some of that stuff that like foils McCoy, where the judge humors listening to the crazy like POW motion. And then, you know, the judge keeps saying things like, I'll allow it, which by the way, like that only happens on Law and Order, right? Where judges are allowing things all the time just so the audience can hear them. And that, you know, this is the part of the episode too where we get to hear like the manifesto, which isn't entirely crazy, by the way, which is a fun part of the episode. Like when you hear the manifesto, you're like, oh, these are just suburban guys who just want things to be okay. It's not so bad. Anyway, I did love the second judge, and I kind of liked how it sort of brought us into that whole trial part, which is the part that sings.
It was good. I think it got into a little bit of like an 80s montage of him standing up and saying, you know, silence in my court, take them out, you know, and he's looming over them every time. But no, you're right that overall judges and attorneys, they just are ludicrous when you actually have been in a trial. Like every judge on Law and Order, you know, there's an objection and he'll say, well, I'm going to allow it, but I'm going to give you just a little bit of rope.
A short leash.
Like, I'm going to allow it, but I'm not going to like it.
Right. Like, no, they never say that. And you never object with the word objection. If you don't state your basis for the objection, it doesn't even preserve the record. So they only and nobody does objection. Come on. What? No.
Well,
What's the basis of your objection? You know. Hey, there's this great scene where McCoy and Schiff are recalling an argument they had where McCoy was...
You know, when you first applied for a job here, we had an argument about some anti-war protest.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, they broke into a draft board and poured blood over the records, and you defended them. You said a bad law sometimes demands an illegal act.
Nobody got killed. It was a protest, and they took their punishment.
Is McCoy a hypocrite?
Is that a real question?
That's a real question.
Well, first of all, he's a boomer, which I don't like. They're just so annoying. Like, why don't you talk about Woodstock and a Beatles concert? Oh, God, I hate you. And then because everything's going to revolve around Vietnam and how that was so different. And I think we, as Gen Xers, can now, with a good amount of assurance, say that just stop with that.
Shut up, boomers. Just shut it. Yeah. This is a perfect... The fact that you just called him out as a boomer, that's kind of what I was trying to like put my finger on this whole episode. Because the liberal lefty McCoy, who believes that little guys should just be able to protest and do whatever, comes out when it's convenient for him. And the minute that his liberal lefty past is sort of brought out against him, he's like, but no, it is about the law. And it's like, fuck you, Jack McCoy.
So he is a hypocrite.
Yes, he's 100% a hypocrite. That's why I asked if that was a real question.
Yeah, because anything involving Vietnam and the White Album is just off limits for everything. Like that just changes the universe. And anything goes then. But no, you're absolutely right. He sounds ludicrous.
So when they kept panning back to that certain juror,
that guy,
you knew something was up, right?
Totally. They were panning to like all of the jurors. You know, they would like kick somebody out and like the black guy in the front would be like, oh, that doesn't seem fair.
No, but there was that guy with the white hair, Wyrick, who kept leaning forward and looking concerned. And maybe it's because he's a little bit of a hey, it's that guy.
Hey, it's that guy.
Is he?
That he stood out.
Is he really?
Yeah. Can anybody tell us where Walt McPherson...
Clearly not.
In this country, the people and not the courts are sovereign. Isn't that right, Your Honor?
You know what he's known for?
What is he known for?
Well, he played Captain Gaffney on Homicide, Life on the Street.
Huh.
And both he and Sam Waterston were voiceover actors in Ken Burns' Civil War miniseries.
Wow.
Of course, the difference is that Sam Waterston was Lincoln, and he was the guy probably dying of dysentery and writing a letter to his wife.
He was like some Confederate soldier.
Now, everybody's getting thrown out of the court by the judge, and the judge won't let him present the evidence about a corrupt government. And for all that Christie is wrong about, he's not wrong that the system is rigged against him making that kind of argument against the government that the nation was founded on, right?
I have to say, this episode did a very good job, and the actor who plays Christie, again, did a very good job of playing the beleaguered, the system is rigged against me guy. And Jack McCoy wasn't picking up on that strategy at all. Like, the people would get kicked out, and Jack would look smug. And Christie would like shrug his shoulders and be like, see, I'm not even allowed to say a sentence without someone shutting me up.
Your Honor, I move you excuse the entire jury and declare a mistrial.
Because they might acquit?
Because Mr. Shelby is encouraging them to nullify.
Which is his right in an illegal trial. I mean, you've already thrown out all my co-defendants. Now you want to throw out the jury too? I mean, it's not enough. You have the whole power of government behind you. You also have to rig the verdict.
You entered the courtroom with the presumption of innocence just like anyone else.
The rights that I am fighting to protect are your rights too.
I can defend my own rights, Mr. Christie.
He wasn't wrong. What he was saying was cuckoo bananas. But if I were a juror and I didn't know what he was going to say was cuckoo bananas, you have to remember, like, Jack knew what he was going to say. And the judge knew probably what he was going to say because, like, that kind of cuckoo bananas is familiar to those guys. But the jurors are just, like, people off the street, right? And so they just see a guy getting shut up over and over and over again. So I get it. I get why he'd be frustrated.
Wyrick, take away his bad acts that are putting him in that courtroom. He does a pretty good summation of American dissatisfaction at that time, does he not?
He's clearly the finest actor in this episode, and he does do a good, subtle job of acting. I mean, he's the anti-Jack McCoy in that sense, that he's not flying off the handle, and he's just saying, like, yeah, you know, we were supposed to always do better than, you know, the previous generation. Is that happening for you? And, you know, we have less time with our children.
We believe that our government has been sold to global corporations that are sucking the blood and the life out of this country. NAFTA, illegal campaign contributions by foreign businessmen, the sale of foreign policy.
He does a great job with that. I mean, listen, I'm not talking about black helicopters or anything like that, especially in our current political climate, but I'm saying the actor doing that summation does a great job.
I actually think the speech itself, the summation itself, was interesting, and it spoke maybe to the time. What is this, 1998?
1997.
So these are the Clinton years, right?
Yep.
Economy's booming. People are thinking, you know, except for the feelings about Bill Clinton, like there's a lot of positive feelings in the country at that time. It was sort of like a little bit of a good economic period for some.
Yeah.
And the thing about the summation that was interesting is he was saying that, like, all the attention is going to poor people and rich people. And it's the people right here in the middle, like the average family, the middle class family that's just not getting anywhere. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like, that's the sentiment that we just heard in this past election. Of course, they didn't necessarily care that rich people were getting benefits, but it was very much aimed towards, you know, poor people. But that being said, it was a very interesting, prescient look at dissatisfaction in the middle class. And it was written really well and compellingly, and it kind of made me think, like, I hope nobody with bad intentions now gets their hands on the script, because I sort of felt for the guy a little bit.
Rebecca, you've been getting fluoride in the water. It's tainted your brain.
And then the McCoy 5000 wanders on over and starts giving his roundup. The best part I thought of his closing argument was that he started by, like, gathering himself and going, okay, like this was going to be, like, really difficult physically for him.
I can't believe I have to do this shit again.
All right.
These guys did a great job of memorization. Too bad they didn't learn from it. We all remember that phrase from the Declaration of Independence about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the unalienable rights of everyone. Notice that life comes first.
Now, after all that, can anyone say why the fuck they shot up an armored car in the first place?
No. They never explained that. They never explained what the plan was. The wife, when she was in the stand, was like, he told me they had a plan to rob an armored car. Why?
Well, yeah, explain
they already
the plan.
have plenty of guns. They have enough money to get all those tattoos. Like, why are they robbing an armored car?
All right, let's take a look at the real-life story that inspired this episode.
Can't wait.
Time for Rip from the Headlines.
You think you know who did it? You think you know who did it?
You think you know who did it. You think you know who did it. But you don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. Rip from the headlines.
This episode took cues from several high-profile cases involving anti-government militia groups. Largely unnoticed by the mainstream media, these paramilitary groups were made of people with extreme views. They trained like private armies, sworn to protect the country from those they saw as enemies. Often, this meant the federal government itself. The militia movement made headlines after incidents at Ruby Ridge in Idaho in 1992 and the Branch Davidian compound in Waco in Texas in 1993. In both cases, federal authorities attempted to execute arrest warrants for illegal firearms charges. Both times, the raids turned into firefights, killing government agents, militia members, and resulting in prolonged sieges of the compounds. A jury later acquitted those captured at Ruby Ridge for killing a U.S. Marshal, but during an FBI raid in Waco, 3 fires were intentionally set inside the compound. More than 80 Branch Davidians, including women and children, were killed. These incidents became rallying cries for other right-wing militia groups. They inspired Timothy McVeigh to detonate a truck bomb outside the federal building in Oklahoma City, killing 168 people. In 2014, it was estimated that there were more than 200 militia groups operating in the United States.
Well, guys, remember about a month ago when it seemed so quaint, like a quaint memory, that there were these violent anti-establishment groups among us, arming themselves and being angry? Boy, those were the good old days,
yeah,
weren't
like
they?
a month ago, we were clapping ourselves on the back for Chip and Joanna rebranding Waco, Texas into Fixer Upper Town, right?
And then it all comes flooding back.
It
Tiki
does.
torches, M16s, and
Fake military uniforms.
oh my god, it is a shit show.
It is a total shit show. And I think that it goes beyond politics to say, like, we don't like Nazis, nor do we appreciate people pretending to be the military who are basically just living in cul-de-sacs wherever the hell they live.
And just to be clear, Wyrick hates Nazis and Confederates just as much. Nazis are getting all the bad stuff, but you know what? You Confederates are jerk-offs too.
That's true. They have fought against the United States, goddammit. Some people seem to forget, like, conveniently, right?
Yeah, hey, how's Atlanta?
Hey, I have a question for you, Kevin.
Yeah.
You used to be a television reporter, and in one of the stories that you worked on for a long time, you were sort of like the conduit between somebody who was a tri-corner hat wearing militia hero,
Ed Brown,
and the rest of the world.
Yeah.
There's a video of you doing it on the internet. Did this
you
bring
go to
back memories
YouTube.
for you?
Yeah, there was some of that, and the idea that I don't have to pay my income taxes because some
line and
something wasn't ratified by one state, something was misspelled in a parchment, and it's a loophole. I actually had to go to like their compound.
Yeah,
in the
Ruby
woods.
Ridge guy was there.
Yeah, I mean, we had bulletproof vests that we got after 9/11 and gathered dust, and it was the only time we wore them, and brought gas masks. So, yeah, it was a little tense. It was a little tense.
And their property sold last year, or was on the market last year, and the listing said, property may have unexploded landmines.
Yes. We can't guarantee. It's as is. We can't guarantee you won't get blown up.
That's right.
So wait, Rebecca, is that going to be your first episode of HGTV podcast with landmine removal?
I could just imagine like Hillary trying to redo that. I love it. There are 47 landmines. I cannot renovate your bedroom when I have to remove all of these landmines. It's going to eat all of your budget.
All of a sudden it'll just be Property Brother. Well, that's going to do it for us. I want to thank our guest, Lieutenant Colonel, retired, James Wyrick. Wyrick, where can our listeners follow you online?
They can follow me online on Twitter at PodcastMJ, and they can listen to me on the Military Justice Podcast. It's not quite as fun as this podcast, but
it's
good and informative.
Military Justice is a fine podcast. You shouldn't sell yourself short. Rebecca Lavoie, how can our listeners follow you?
They can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Reb Lavoie. They can listen to Crime Writers On, and they can check out and subscribe to my upcoming podcast, HGTV and Me,
where none of the stars get killed by landmines. You can also tweet to us at Law & Order Pod or follow us on Instagram at These Are Their Stories Podcast. Our newsreader was Cy Frater. Our theme music was composed and performed by Uncanny Valleys. Line editing by Henry Lavoie. Content assistance from Travis Roy. Promotions are handled by Lily Flynn. If you enjoyed this podcast, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps others discover this program just like you did. All clips in this podcast were used in compliance with U.S. Copyrights Act fair use exemption for criticism and commentary. Special thanks to the elite squad of the Law & Order Wiki community for preserving the evidence. If you want to know what episodes we're talking about in our upcoming shows, go to lawandorderpodcast.com, sign up for our newsletter for a chance to be our next Law & Order Marathon winner. These Are Their Stories was recorded in Square Egg Studio and is a production of Partners in Crime Media.
Partners in Crime Media.